What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Breaking Bet here on this Saturday, February 17th. It's going to be a great show because we saw a really good opening day in terms of competition and talent and excitement with that TCU game we're going to get into a little bit. Joining me, it's not Matt Grissom. It's not going to be Matt Grissom on Saturdays. That's my guy. But I also got my guy, Doug Ziefel, coming in from Action Network to talk about some of the things he saw here in college baseball yesterday and what he had on his card. How's it going, Doug? Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Johnny. It's great to be here. And yep, I'm happy college baseball is back. Opening day really lived up to the hype. We had a lot of big highlights, some big upsets, a lot to talk about here.
So, in terms of recapping Friday's slate, what stood out to you the most? Is there a team or is there a player that you really looked at and were pleasantly surprised with or disgusted with?
Um, Looking back on my card, or at least looking back on the slate, you have to be shocked by Florida. I mean, I feel like that's the biggest team to start with here. Getting upset by the Johnnies was not on anybody's bingo card, and probably for the entire weekend.
My alma mater, by the way, St. John's.
uh, So yeah, I mean that's definitely a highlight for you. But I mean, you got to expect them to bounce back in a big way. They're going to have Liam Peterson going today, and then Cags going on Sunday. But that's definitely a shock. You know, this is college baseball, and I'm not sure what the line was, what the Johnnies closed at. But if anybody had them on any kind of spread, you got a nice payout to start your season.
Yeah, actually, the game's postponed today because of weather.
Okay.
That's another thing that is the worst about the sport is the rainouts,
Florida
the delays. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a doubleheader tomorrow. But you're right, Doug. Florida was just they were a no-show. I had concerns about Florida with their pitching, losing Waldrop and Sproat because you're replacing him with Cade Fisher, he was really good last year, but he was a midweek guy. Now he's not only slotting into the weekend rotation, but he's slotting in as the Friday night guy. And then you got a freshman who's supposed to be talented, but you don't know what you're going to get. And then you still have to rely on Cags to improve from last year back in that Sunday role. For me, I want to do two here. One, resilience of the TCU Horned Frogs to bounce back after being down 9-3. Huge eighth inning rally for them to ultimately walk it off in the bottom of the ninth on a drop third strike. Peyton Chatnier went from second to home on a drop third strike, and that was really good. But then also on the other side of the coin, two teams that Matt, Noah, like our whole group was in on was Kansas State and Northeastern. They were both huge disappointments, flat out no-shows. We actually are going to be talking about them today, maybe a little bit of rebound action on these two teams that we have highly touted. But I think, some of the better teams, top 25s, just didn't show up at all. UCLA, I think, ended up winning as well, but they had to have a big comeback effort of their own to avoid an upset from Gonzaga.
Yeah, there's definitely the thing is the key for looking at today's slate is looking at how the market reacted to a lot of these teams disappointing yesterday. I mean, you mentioned K-State, and there's another team that I actually thought I was impressed with. It was Tennessee. Obviously, they brought in a lot of talent in the lineup, but you saw they made a surprise move by starting Russell, and he proved to be the correct guy. And now they get to play with get to throw Drew Beam tonight against Oklahoma, which actually is another team I was high on yesterday. Oklahoma disappointed me a little bit. I know you guys were on Oregon, right, Johnny? A couple of you guys had them.
Yeah, Matt and myself were on Oregon yesterday, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Oklahoma, they're a team that I'm still willing to buy in on them. I have a very large futures ticket, and I'm hoping that I can deal with that down the road. But upside pitching, veteran lineup, they are one of the teams that I would look at. If it wasn't Drew Beam, they wouldn't be a bounce back team. But yeah, a lot of reactions in the market to analyze today.
That's my favorite because you got a couple I don't want to say fluke performances, but you get a few outliers. And like you said, Doug, there is some overreaction because there's a 1 game sample size. That's it. So, for instance, and I'm going to take it to the first game here, that's the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, fresh off a 26-piece at home against George Mason. They got the Hoosiers, who really were a disappointment yesterday against Duke. That total was 18.5. Then I wrote it at 18.5, literally on the screen below. Then it dropped to 17.5, so I had to change it. Now I'm looking at the screen again. It's back up to 18. So I actually have to go in and change this real quick because the total keeps moving between 17.5 and 18.5. And, because Coastal Carolina, like, we know their offense is elite, Doug. Like, that's a no-brainer. And the pitching was the big thing. But they're coming out a 26-run performance. So the total at 18 is definitely reflecting of that. Do you think that's too high and that's an overreaction and you'd play the under, or where are you going with that?
I don't know if I would directly play the under because part of it too. I mean, yes, Coastal came off a big performance, but you have to look at Indiana's lineup. They've got a lot of talent in their outfield with Devin Taylor. This is a lineup that you got to be surprised was quiet yesterday against Duke and Santucci. But they showed pop, and obviously they're in Conway, so that the ball is flying there. So that the park factors have a lot to do with that total. And while the under does seem like the play of based on the market reaction, it wouldn't be something that I would lean heavily towards.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I had to make a play, I probably would go with Coastal. I think Coastal wins. I have Coastal in a couple parlays. I'll get to that later. Indiana scares me, though. I think this is a team that can definitely hang with the Chants. The pitching for Coastal is yet to be seen. Riley Eichhoff did a great job yesterday, but like Indiana, I just don't know if they're going to have enough pitching in the bullpen to keep up. But I definitely think they can hang with Coastal. I think the total at 18 is a good play. Ultimately, I feel like the Chanticleers will win this game, but it wouldn't surprise me to see the Hoosiers stay with them. But I think if I had my 2 picks here, it'd be Coastal in the over at 18. But as of right now, officially, I think I'm just sticking with Coastal's money line in a parlay. Doug, I think Indiana is going to be an interesting team this year. It really depends on their pitching. We know that they can hit. They left a lot of meat on the bone against Duke. They had a good chance to win that game outright against Santucci. They had an opportunity in the first, they couldn't cash in. They had an opportunity in the third or the fourth, couldn't cash in. I feel like the Hoosiers, I want to take them again. But at the end of the day, I feel like I just got to go with the better team. That's going to be Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, the one thing you brought up there is obviously pitching, but more so the bullpen was the issue yesterday. I mean, that game was tight through the first 5 innings. You had Reisdorf was not Reisdorf. You had Reisdorf pitching well, and then after he went out, it just seemed to implode for the Hoosiers. Their bullpen, balls were flying out left and right off Duke's bats, and as you go deeper into the weekend, the bullpen's only going to be more taxed. So it could be bad if Coastal's lineup stays hot.
Yeah, I think Coastal might hit 12 or 13 runs on their own. So this is definitely something I feel like I would play the over, and it sucks because it is an overreaction a little bit, but it's also not an overreaction because Coastal could hit this total by themselves. So I'm excited to see that game. That is one of the earlier games on the slate. So if you don't mind, I will be just watching college baseball all day. Actually, it's not earlier. It's a 3 p.m. game. But let's go to another game, Doug, here. Kick us off with a high total with Oregon State and Minnesota, 14.5. OSU is a gigantic minus 720 fave. So unless you're putting in a money line parlay, you're not going to do that. You could flirt with the run line at 5.5. They covered 3.5 with the E's yesterday. They put up 15 runs against New Mexico. Total money line parlay, run line. Where are you going with this?
Yeah, if you read my article yesterday, I was on the run line yesterday, and I was waiting for it this morning, looking for something right around that 3.5, 4.5 range. But unfortunately, we're up to 5.5, and it's kind of going to be a no play for me. But you really got to buy the hype around this Oregon State team. What they did yesterday was a statement. I mean, this lineup is loaded. They've got Travis Benzana, Trent Caraway. They're going to be able to mash all year long, and the market, like you said, for the money line, they've been thrown into some parlays early. I saw they opened up around 550, and they're almost, they're up to 720 now. You have listed here, so
Yep.
they're definitely going to be a team that's going to be an anchor in parlays. And we were talking a little bit before the show. Minnesota is not quite down to the level of New Mexico, so a lot of else is out of play. Is probably out of play, but Oregon State is definitely a team to buy against more competitive programs.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke extensively about Oregon State in the preseason episodes of this podcast. Oregon State's a team I have going to the College World Series. And the reason is because their lineup, top to bottom, if it's not the best in the country, it's top three. The pitching was a concern. Loved what I saw from Aiden May, transfer from Arizona yesterday. He looked really good. And I feel like if the pitching can be strong, this team is going to be a real threat to win it all. The bullpen looked good, but again, it's New Mexico. This is not even a good Pac-12 team. It's not a USC. It's not a Stanford who got doubleheader swept by Cal State Fullerton. Wish that line was available. It was not, because I would have been all over Fullerton at least to take one game. Oregon State here, I probably will go with the total. I am taking the over half unit at 14.5. And it's not because I'm overreacting. It's because I truly believe that this lineup is going to be good. And I think they're probably good for 10 to 12 runs on their own today. They're going against Minnesota, who, like you said, is a step up from New Mexico, but they're not that great. And if you look at who they're throwing, Minnesota is throwing Tucker Novotny, who was the proud owner of a 5.03 ERA last year, 39 walks and 73 and a third innings. He did allow 9 home runs. And then on the Oregon State flip side, you got Jacob Kmatz, who is decent, but he's not a shutdown starter, Doug. He had a 4.71 ERA, a little high here on the home runs. He lit up 13 a season ago. Believe it or not, he actually opened his season last year against Minnesota with 4 innings, 1 earned, 4 Ks. But I think this Oregon State team is a lot different than last year's, and that score ended up being 8-7. So I feel like Oregon State's overs are going to be a big play a lot of the year. So give me the half unit play over 14.5, Doug.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like you just talked me into it. I'm gonna have to bet it as soon as I can here.
It was because of what happened last year, opening day last year for them when they played Minnesota. Okay, so this is the big one. This is one of the big winners that we had yesterday. This was the UC Santa Barbara Gauchos. They're out to minus 166. They're at Campbell again for the weekend series in North Carolina. By the way, Santa Barbara opened up at 12:30 this morning. So, like the sicko that I am, I'm waiting for DraftKings to drop the lines for Saturday. I was up late last night, and it was around 12:30 in the morning that Santa Barbara opened up at a minus 120 favorite, Campbell minus 110. So almost a pick 'em. So I tweet out Santa Barbara right at 12:26, I think it was. Wake up, they're out to minus 150. And then as I'm getting ready to prepare the show, they move again to 166. Kind of like the first game where they got hit hard. The aggressive movement is happening again, Doug. And then another overreaction, maybe with the total being at 16.5 after Santa Barbara put up a 20 piece yesterday. What's your play now with the movement that happened, or did you have something before the movement started?
I wasn't able to get in on the Gauchos before the movement like you were, but I mean, definitely the market movement is a big reaction to yesterday, and it's well deserved. I mean, obviously they did damage offensively, But then you also had their ace going in Ager. But the thing is here, with Saturday, it's going to be a drop off in pitching, and I feel like the movement's been a little bit too much. Campbell is an experienced team. They've got a lot of pop. They might be live as dogs here, especially with the price moving against them.
So here's what I did. Because I was able to grab that minus 120 on Santa Barbara, and I think Santa Barbara is going to win today. And I feel like they might sweep the series because the main reason is Santa Barbara, in a surprising move today, is throwing their closer, Hudson Barrett, who is really good. He had a 1.9 ERA, 5-1 record, 6 saves. He had 82 Ks to like 35 walks in 61 innings. The walks are a tad high, but he's got really good stuff in terms of the fact that it plays well off each other. For instance, he has a fastball that's 89 to 92, 81 mile an hour slider, 80 mile an hour changeup, but he mixes and matches really well to keep hitters off balance. He hasn't gone past 4 innings at any start last year, so I don't think it's going to be a long outing for him. But the thing is Campbell's throwing Zach Sabers, or their projected Zach Sabers. He's a JUCO transfer who didn't pitch last year because of an injury, and he was recruited to originally play outfield. He hasn't pitched in a couple years, which means I think he's probably going to be rusty. He probably won't go very long. And as we know, the Camels don't have pitching. They're just they lack pitching everywhere this year, especially. The offense isn't what it was last year. We know they could still do some damage. You got Lawson Harrell, you got Grant Knipp. But for me, I think Santa Barbara is interesting here at minus 166. I probably will go with the under at 16.5 if I was playing the total, which I don't think I am, because it's hard for me to see another high score again. I feel like Santa Barbara's bats, I don't want to say they blew their load, but I feel like it's fair to say that they might stick to like a 7-run game, maybe beat Campbell, something along the lines of like 7-5, 8-6, keep that under. So in an effort for me to mitigate the minus 120 risk that I had to lay for Santa Barbara early this morning, I just jumped on a half unit play for Campbell at plus 2.5, where you're laying minus 120, half unit. So either way, I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to lose more than like 0.6 units, but then there's an opportunity to hit both. So at worst case scenario, it's like lose 0.6 units. Best case scenario is win 1.5 units. So I feel like for me, that's a good way to kind of mitigate it. And with that price being where it is now, if you're just jumping into the market, I do think laying 166 is probably fair. Doug, does this movement scare you at all? It's a similar trajectory yesterday, maybe like a trendy pick. It's not a dog, but where are you going with this here?
Yeah, like I said, I mean the movement is definitely warranted, but 166 is a lot for, like you said, the question marks after their closer and even with their closer, because how you explain this pitching situation very well. We don't know how long he's going to go. Will he be effective in this starting role? And what's to come after him? It's going to be a complete shuffle of their pen. And we know Campbell has some pop, like you said, but obviously their pitching is going to be as much of a question mark as anything. In terms of the price, I agree with you that it maybe 166 is probably the limit at this point. It might have gone a bit too far, but if you're able to get in it on anything under this, it's definitely a good play.
Just sorry, Doug, you just cut out real quick.
Oh, where did you last hear me?
The limit.
Oh yeah,
166.
We were talking. 166 is, like you said, probably the limit. But with all the uncertainty, I wouldn't lay anything higher than that. And if you're able to find a book that's still soft on their price, then there would still be a solid investment for at least a half a unit.
That's a fair point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now let's get to our next game here. We have the Oklahoma State Cowboys and the Sam Houston State Bearcats. This opened up with Oklahoma being like a minus 170 favorite and Sam Houston being around 134. That's moved up, actually. More action coming in on Oklahoma State. Total sitting at 13.5, I believe. They may have actually not put that out. Let me double check. But again, it's people buying the fact that the Cowboys are going to be able to replicate the success of last year when Matt and myself were both on Sam Houston State yesterday with the run line, and we thought the sprinkle of the money line was warranted, and it turns out it was. And I definitely mentioned if DraftKings did what they told me they would do when I requested weekend series prices, I would have hit Sam Houston State on the weekend series price because I think they could beat the Cowboys. Now they just have to win either today or tomorrow to do so, and you're getting a good number with them. Do you think OK State bounces back, or do you think Sam Houston takes a series today?
Sam Houston definitely made a statement yesterday, really taking the momentum out of the series. This was a game I was on yesterday, but I was not on a side. I was on the total, and my angle still kind of holds the same because if you look at Oklahoma State's issues, it's really going to be pitching and pitching depth. They have a lot of question marks there, and but they're still going to have the offense to outslug teams. And the same is going to go for Sam Houston State. Obviously, their ace made me put my foot in my mouth yesterday. I was talking about his low velocity fastball and how it's not going to play up against this Big 12 team. Really, not a good look for me here on opening day. But I definitely was impressed by Sam Houston, and the total is going to be something I look at if it's around that 13.5, maybe even 14 area, because I just have serious concerns about Oklahoma State's pitching depth.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up, and I apologize. I had that as a precursor from yesterday. The total hasn't come out. There's still probably about a third of the games where totals and run lines have not been released yet, but I agree with you. It was a 9-run total yesterday, so hopefully it's somewhere between like 12 and 14, maybe 13 to kind of split the difference. But I think we could be in for a higher scoring day too. Sam Houston State is going with a lefty, Marshall Wales, and he wasn't really that impressive last year. He had a 5.43 ERA. I don't think it's confirmed who Oklahoma State is throwing, but I got to be honest, dude. I really, really like Sam Houston if the run line again is like plus 2.5. Nothing official for me here on this game, but that's where I would move.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like I said, Sam Houston's they impressed yesterday, and I might have to look for that run line along with you.
Yeah, so as soon as that gets released, I think this game ends up being a little bit later today. That's going to be a 4:00 game. So we got some time there. Bring us to our next game. It's going to be the Texas Longhorns against the San Diego Toreros in a second matchup. Texas snuck it out yesterday. I was on the run line at minus 2.5 for the Longhorns. Do you think they're going to be able to repeat yesterday without LeBaron Johnson on the mound?
You know, that was interesting to see. I had the run line as well, but I was able to find a 1.5, and I paid 135 juice for it. And you know, I checked the score on their Twitter. What was it? It was the second inning, and they were down 2-0. San Diego had gotten out on LeBaron, and I was like, oh man, this run line's done, because I don't know if I have the same confidence in Texas as I have in years past, but this San Diego team might still be getting a little bit too much respect in terms of how they've been priced and how they were priced yesterday, especially with going against LeBaron. I don't have who's Texas confirmed or second projected starter today.
So it's not going to be Tanner Witt. They're not actually sure that Tanner Witt's going to be their guy. It's going to be Charlie Hurley. And Charlie Hurley, I don't really have much film on, but I think there's a realistic shot that Texas could struggle again. They got lucky to pull it out yesterday. LeBaron, unfortunately, I can't say I watched the game because I don't have Longhorn Network and I refuse to buy a 5th subscription. Like, I'm sick of that. But Charlie Hurley was decent last year, 4.42 ERA. had 5 starts, 22 appearances. Walks are a little high. He had 27 walks in 55 innings. So, there's not much game film on him in terms of his role as a starter, but, it's one of those arms that's kind of like middle of the pack and, whatever else the offense could do against San Diego.
Yeah, and I think you see that reflected in the total. I mean, it's at what, 9.5 here, and that's really not because, like we said, there's not really an elite pitcher like LeBaron in this matchup. It's really due to the question marks surrounding the Texas offense, and then obviously San Diego is not really the potent. It's not going to be the A side in terms of offense in this matchup either.
I think for me, it's a complete stay away. We got lucky yesterday with Texas. They were down for most of the game. It took a grand slam for them to not only win but cover. So for me, I'm probably staying away here. I don't like the pitching. I feel like there's too many holes in Texas's roster. So we were talking about it preseason with NCAA insiders on, who we like to win the conference. I ended up going with TCU, and my dark horse was going to be K-State. Texas was the second favorite at like plus 450. And the reason I didn't go with them was because what I just said. There's too many holes in this roster. They have some A-list talent. Like some of their top talent is among the best at their position in the country, but there's just too much uncertainty surrounding this roster. Okay, Doug, I'm going to kick us off here with the Tennessee Volunteers in the Shriners Classic, Day 2, fresh off a nice win against Texas Tech. Now they're playing Oklahoma. Oklahoma only put up 2 runs against Oregon. A.J. Russell was sensational last night. Double-digit punchies. Stuff looked fantastic. Kid was virtually unhittable. He lit up a couple seeing eye singles in the 5th inning, ended up giving up some runs that were charged to him. But this is the guy that might be the Friday night guy moving forward. And if that's the case, and you have Drew Beam, a projected first rounder this summer, on Saturday, teams are going to be really, really worried about this 1-2 punch they have. What's the play here? Because the Volunteers were minus 210 at the open. They've moved out to minus 238. Where are you going to go with this game here?
Yeah, I'm going to go right back to something I bet yesterday, which is the Vols on the run line. And yesterday I was able to get it at even money, which is a great price. And it's probably not what we're going to see today, especially with Drew Beam on the mound. And he's more established. Obviously, we have years of a good track record, and he was really going to be the projected Friday night guy. But what makes the run line a play for me with Tennessee is obviously we're going to expect Beam to hold down an Oklahoma team that didn't impress yesterday. But this lineup from top to bottom can produce. You got Christian Moore at the top, you have Billy Amick, and a bunch of other talent they brought in. Obviously, you got Burke and Power. And Oklahoma is a team I'm high on, but it just doesn't look like they're going to be able to keep up with the Vols here, especially if Beam is sharp to start the season.
I think this is one of those cases where you could lay it out to 250, and I'd be okay. There's not many times where I'm going to tell you, yeah, I like a team 250, but I think Tennessee is going to be an exception here. I really, as soon as the run line comes out, that's probably going to be on my card. This game's not till later. It's at 6:00, so we don't know. It could be released now or in 3 hours. We don't know. But in my opinion, if I'm pre-handicapping this game, you're at a 238 favorite. I'd probably say the run line is going to be most likely 2.5. So if that's the case, and you're laying, let's say, 2.5 runs with a minus 130, minus 135 vig, I would play that. I think Tennessee's going to win by like 5 or 6 runs today. And I believe, I'm not certain, they might be the away team. I'm not sure that they're not really in Oklahoma. It's in the Stadium.
As it's listed, like on DraftKings, Tennessee would be the away team for this tournament style matchup.
Right. So let me actually see, because the one problem I have with DraftKings is like the way they list it out, you would think a team's home or away, but it actually has no indication. Okay, so they are, I don't know. It doesn't really say. I don't know who would be the home or away team. And typically, I don't like to lay run lines with home teams, but in this case, whether they're home or away, I would still lay 2.5. I might even lay up to 3.5 if you're getting a good plus number for it, maybe like half unit on a 3.5 run line. But 2.5 is where I feel comfortable. I think Volunteers are going to play really well today. I feel like Chase Burns, Drew Beam is gonna shut it out today. Doug, one of our big disappointments yesterday was the Kansas State Wildcats. Opened up at minus 120 at 12:30 this morning. Now, like Santa Barbara, pushed out past 150, all the way past 166. They're at Boston College. This is a Desert Invitational, so also they're actually not in Boston. Do you think BC's got a shot here today, or K-State bounces back?
No, I think this is a buyback spot, and obviously you mentioned the steam. I was able to get that 120 price a few hours ago this morning, but this is a spot where you can still buy back in on Kansas State here. They're facing a Boston College team that does not have much pitching staff depth, and we saw Kansas State's offense get off to a slow start, but start to get things together going later in the game, and I think that's going to carry over, especially against against the Boston College staff that is not going to be able to hold them down for 6 to 7 innings like they were yesterday.
I think it's worth noting that Kansas State is a bounce back candidate today. They're going to be going with Ty Rule projected, and I don't think Boston College has – they might be going with A.J. Colarusso. So, the pitching matchup is kind of – I feel like pitching-wise it's going to favor K-State a little bit more. And the reason is, Doug, because you have a guy like Tyson Neighbors in the pen. They didn't get a chance to use him yesterday. The thing with Kansas State is they just have to get a lead going into the ninth because it's virtually impossible that a team is going to come back on Tyson Neighbors to win the game. I feel like 166 is kind of pushing the threshold here, like Santa Barbara. I was very unimpressed with the way the Wildcats looked, but I do think they bounce back here. I feel like if you could get the run line at minus 1.5, I'd probably lean that way a little bit more. But if you want to throw the 166, I don't hate you for it. Boston College is a pesky program, but they lost a lot of their talent, like Travis Honeyman and Joe Vitrano from last year. So I think K-State does get back to business here. 120 was where we got it at, but 166, if you want, I still think it's a worthy endeavor. I think, the last play we have listed here is going to be the Northeastern Huskies. So this is interesting because the Huskies were plus 160 at the open for Friday. All of us hit Northeastern. They were another big disappointment, very upset with them. I had a long heart-to-heart with them last night, tell them they got to be better. Wyatt Scotty looked like shit. He couldn't find the zone. He couldn't locate. The offense decided to not show up yesterday. And because so many people were betting Northeastern, I think DraftKings stood up and took notice, and they set the line to open at plus 135. The Huskies are still the dog, but you could see what the opening prices looked like and how they have a little bit more, I would say, respect for Northeastern. But do you think the Huskies get back on track here, or do you think Arizona ends up taking the series?
The thing with this this Northeastern teams, it's really a testament to whether college baseball is becoming an efficient market or not. And I know it's very early in the year, and we're definitely going to see some inefficiencies. But Northeastern is a team that we're probably going to have to keep buying on for a while. I'm not saying that 135 isn't overpriced in this spot, but definitely, like we said, coming into the series, they were underpriced. But for us bettors yesterday, like you said, what was really a shot in the heart with how much CLV we had. Getting almost 40 cents there, getting from 160 down to closed at like 120.
Yeah.
Now I didn't really get a chance to see this game, but for Arizona to come out and be minus 175 they must have really impressed yesterday. Maybe you can enlighten me on what their pitching looks like, because I know last year they had issues with depth.
Are we talking about Arizona?
Yeah.
So Arizona's going with Clark Candiotti. He's
Mhm.
projected. I think Zona put out their pitching staff. And I was surprised because Jackson Kent threw yesterday for the Wildcats, and he wasn't even good. He made 4 starts last year as a freshman. He had almost a 5 ERA. The guy was nothing special, and it made a potent Northeastern offense, look incapable. But I think the point to note here is the Huskies made a lot of mental mistakes yesterday. They had a runner run himself out. I forget the exact scenario, but it would have been second and third, 1 out, and instead the guy tried to score on a pitch that was fouled out. So the batter fouled it out to first, but it was towards deeper right field, and he tried to tag up, and then he went halfway, and then he thought the ball got away and committed, but then there was the pitcher backing up, and then they threw him out at third. So they ran themselves out of an inning, and then the right fielder on a routine fly ball just completely lost it, and that led to another run. So I mean, if a couple things happen in Northeastern's, not making these mental mistakes, they could have actually been up after the first couple innings, and that might have changed the game. So I would think that mental stuff they'll clean up today. Pitching wise, they're not going to be going with Avon Cabral. I'm not really sure why they're saving Avon Cabral for their Sunday role, because he's probably their best arm. They're going to go with Dennis Colleran. I do think this is a spot where Northeastern's got to get back on track. They have to. I don't see them losing 2 in a row. I feel like we're going to be seeing them get back to business today. Okay, so Doug, is there any other games that you're interested in here?
Yeah, the one team that we were talking about, how Tennessee might be underpriced even still. Another team that I think is underpriced going into today is Iowa. They're still heavy at minus 210, but they're putting Marcus Morgan on the mound. Obviously, Brody Brett wasn't lights out. Obviously, Walk's still an issue for him, but he still made a statement for this team. And then Marcus Morgan is a stellar number 2 for this staff. He had a 3.72 ERA in 15 starts, and he's somebody who you should back at a price. We're seeing it steam on other sites. Up to 250 was the highest I saw, but if it's going to be 40 cents light at DraftKings, I'm gonna pay up for it. Put a full unit on that.
Yeah, I like that look. I think Iowa is definitely a good spot today. I was worried about taking them. So I actually thought Seton Hall was a good play yesterday in a sprinkle. I didn't see a run line on it. And the money line was actually lighter than I thought. It was plus 250. And the reason was because Brody Brecht first start might be rusty, might have a short pitch count. Seton Hall could take advantage of some situations. They're going to be in the game, and they only lost, I think, 5-2. And Brody Brecht walked 6 guys. He had 11 strikeouts in 4 1/3. I mean, that's expected because he's gross. And he also hit a batter. He had 7 free passes. Seton Hall had a lot of opportunities to capitalize, and they just didn't. But it was there. I was kind of looking forward to them because I thought they were going to take 1 game from Iowa. But they're playing Ball State today. I'm with you here, Doug. I think 210 is too light. I think Marcus Morgan is definitely a shot to have a great day. I don't know much about Ball State, I'll be honest. I don't really pay attention to them. But knowing how Iowa's got Morgan, and they're a team that can, they can dominate when they're doing a lot of the little things right. I feel like 210 is a fair number here for the Hawkeyes.
Another team I'm on is Texas Tech, and this is a price that has moved since I got it this morning. I have Texas Tech at minus 150, and I've seen them get as high as 180 around different sites. Essentially, here they're playing Nebraska, and if you watched the college baseball fantasy draft we did with a bunch of the other guys, Matt Grissom, Noah Beanick, you know that a lot of bats in the Texas Tech lineup are guys we are going to want to watch. This team can mash, and we didn't really see them to their full potential, obviously, because they faced a great pitching staff with Tennessee yesterday, but they're going to face Nebraska, who had a tough time getting the bats going against a Baylor pitching staff that is questionable, would be putting it nicely. So I'm expecting the Red Raiders to bounce back heavily here and just mash their way to a victory against the Cornhuskers.
I would think so as well. I don't know who is confirmed to start for the Red Raiders. I apologize if you said that, but I might have missed it.
Let me see if I can find it. I did not have it written down, but like I said, my play is more on their lineup bouncing back here, especially against a Cornhuskers team that doesn't look like they're going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, I think Nebraska, because they played Baylor yesterday, they were able to kind of give them a little bit of a test here. It's funny to see how much movement is going on in real time. And, just to scurry back to a different point, Texas's total's out to 13.5. I don't know where that's coming from. And the run line's out to 3.5 after it was 2.5 yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to look at another game here. What's your feeling on Dallas Baptist in the second game against Southeast Missouri State? They're out to minus 280 on the money line. The run line's 3.5. They ended up, I think, winning by 4 yesterday. They looked really bad for the first half. Ryan Johnson was not sharp. I think Nick Wilson was the guy who came in relief and it was just shut down. He looked phenomenal. He kept the game in place and allowed the Dallas Baptist offense to come back. Are you feeling a 3.5 run line at home here at minus 105, or just throwing them in a parlay?
They might be a safer as a parlay team. I mean, like you said, the pitching depth has usually been an issue with this program, and I don't know a lot about SEMO, but if the Dallas Baptist does not get the bats going early, that run line could be dicey. They're definitely going to be a parlay team for me, at least until we see some sort of established pitching depth, even behind Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I feel like I like Dallas Baptist, but I have them in a couple plays. We do have a comment here. I apologize, I missed it. What do we think? Any lean on the Indiana State UConn game? Shane, apologize. I just saw this. For me, I feel like this is probably a pass. These are two teams that are very evenly matched, and I haven't spent enough time analyzing UConn's roster. Indiana State for me is kind of one of those teams that is okay. I'm not super impressed by them. I know they hosted the Supers last year, but I don't know. Doug, do you got anything here?
I'm the same here. Honestly, I don't know a ton about UConn, but it seems like Indiana State's getting more respect than they were yesterday. And obviously they come into this season with much more of a pedigree, like you said, hosting a regional. But at minus 120, that's really implying that they're slight favorites, if not this game is a coin flip. Given from what we still probably need to see out of both teams here, it's going to be a stay away for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sorry, Shane. I don't have anything there. Okay, let me ask you about this game here, Doug. What about Xavier and Clemson? Clemson blew them out of the gym. I thought Xavier was going to have a shot to keep this one close. They had a kid throwing that Luke, I forgot his name, but Luke something. And he actually had a really good start against Vanderbilt in the SEC series, or SEC conference tournament last year. He did not look good. Clemson flexed their muscles and then blew them out. Do you think Clemson runs it back, or do you think my take on Xavier is they get one game out of this series, and today's the day?
I think Clemson runs it back today. You know, what is the difference? I have them actually in a money line parlay today with TCU, and the difference here for me is they're going to start lefty Tristan Smith, and this is another kid there. Clemson's rotation is all upside this year. And Tristan Smith is a kid they're high on, sitting 90-92 from the left side, good breaking stuff, and is a freshman. I think that he's going to get plenty of run support. Xavier's pitching staff doesn't have a lot of depth, and like you said, their ace did not make a good impression yesterday.
Yep.
So I think Clemson's going to wind up pulling away again here as the game goes on.
That's interesting. I do think you kind of talked me into it because I was looking at the Clemson run line at 3.5. I feel like their offense is just going to blow them away here. I think I might add this 3.5 plus 110 onto my card because, I don't know if Xavier's going to have the horses to keep up in this contest here. Okay, so I think that probably does it. Maybe one more game I wanted to touch on, if you had the time, was Texas A&M hosting McNeese again. So I mean, the money line's out to 500 for A&M, so you're not going to take that unless it's in a parlay. But the total sitting at 15 flat, and the run line's 5.5. Given that A&M put up a 15 spot on their own accord yesterday, Jace Lavalette looked fantastic. 2 taters. Brady Montgomery, a welcome to A&M tater. Do you think A&M blows them out again? Is 5.5 good? Is the over good? Well, what would you have on this game?
I mean, given what we saw from the Aggies yesterday, 5.5 has to be in play. I mean, this is a team that's going to have pop, and they showed it yesterday. I'm not well researched on McNeese's pitching depth, but like I said, with a lot of these lowered mid-major teams, you're going to see their best guys early, and then it's going to fall off as the weekend goes on. And this is not a lineup that you can fall off against.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like A&M, if I was playing something in this game, I do have them in a couple money line parlays, like I said, but I think the 5.5 is fair. You're laying 120 for it. I feel like A&M's probably going to put up somewhere between 12 and 15 runs again today. They're throwing Justin Lampkin, the Aggies are. They're expecting big things from him in his sophomore year. He's like hit or miss. He had a really good start against South Carolina last year in the SEC tournament. 7 shutout innings, only allowed 1 hit, had 9 strikeouts. So if that guy shows up to play today, and this is more of a tune-up game for these powerhouse programs. This is a game where these guys can come out, get some work in, build a little confidence, and propel them for the rest of the season. So I feel like Lampkin, who's pretty solid, nice crossfire lefty delivery, out to 91, 92, 93. I think he's going to have a good enough start. Again, it's probably more of a pitch count of 80, maybe let him go 5 innings. But I do think the Aggies are going to get it done here. I wouldn't hate to lay it with 5.5. Probably won't be on my official card, but if you're looking at this game, I think it's a fair number given how good this team is. Okay, so I think that'll just about do it. Here is the Saturday card right now. Pending anything else that I'm adding, it's going to be the Northeastern money line, UCSB money line, Kansas State money line, Campbell plus 2.5 at a half unit, Oregon State, Minnesota over 14, parlaying Duke, Iowa, Arkansas, Oregon State, parlaying Wake, LSU, Coastal, NC State, parlaying Tennessee, DBU, and TAMU. Doug, what's your best plays for today?
My best play is that money line parlay I talked about between TCU and Clemson. If you can take it on DraftKings, you're going to get them down to a minus 122, put them together. We talked about Clemson, how they're expected to run away from Xavier. But if you look at the TCU side, obviously they needed a miraculous comeback to win last night. And I think that's only going to be a confidence boost to them, even though they didn't look good early. But today they get to throw Cole Klecker, who was their big man on campus last year as a freshman. Kid pitched in the biggest spots, and look for him to come out and set the tone for this team after a rough start yesterday.
Love it, man. Doug, welcome to the show, baby. Oh, my God. Great opening day debut. Tell everybody where they can find you, Doug. Find your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Action Network. All my work will be there online, but then I will post everything on my Twitter. It's nice and easy to find. It's at Doug Ziefel. I know my last name is hard to spell, so it's going to be right there on the screen for you.
And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at _JohnnyVTV. You can find the podcast on Spotify as well at Breaking Bet, the college baseball betting show. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Hopefully, you have a very profitable Saturday afternoon, and take care, and we'll see you next week.